Hello, welcome to Small Groups. It's good to see you. And on Sunday, I was speaking about Paul and his second missionary journey, and the title was Go, No or Slow. And we reflected a little bit on the incident in Acts 15 where Paul and Barnabas had this really sharp disagreement, and Paul ended up taking off with Silas and leaving Barnabas behind. And I wondered whether perhaps Paul, being the enthusiast that he is, being the zealot, as he sometimes calls himself, that he is, maybe he was in a bit of a mood when he left. Maybe the adrenaline was still pumping. But anyway, he sets off and he picks up Timothy en route. And Timothy, of course, becomes his son in the faith. He becomes a pastor of some of the churches that Paul founds. And so there is this great relationship that we see the very beginning of as Paul takes Timothy on with him. But then come the really, for me, the interesting incidents where twice in very short measure, Paul is stopped from doing stuff. So first of all, he wants to cross over a border and go off into a different region. And it says that the Holy Spirit stopped him. What do you think that looked like? I suggested that maybe it was somebody else advising him, somebody else having a word for him. But Luke doesn't expand on it. And then very shortly after that, in verse 7, he says, and then he was stopped. Paul was stopped from doing something by the Holy Spirit. The wording is slightly different, and it's almost as though Luke is saying it was a different way that the Holy Spirit stopped him. And I wonder whether you've had experience of that, where you have wanted to do something for God. Maybe God's even told you to do something, and the Holy Spirit has stopped you. So maybe for Paul, as I reflected on, maybe this was him trying to do stuff in his own strength, and the Holy Spirit was stopping him. We don't know. Luke doesn't enlarge on it. And it's interesting that he doesn't, because he's a very accurate recorder of the story. And he doesn't really explain in any more depth. It's almost as though he's leaving it for us to fill in the gaps. What happened? We don't actually know. But maybe it was the Holy Spirit speaking and revealing and instructing Paul. Don't go there. I've got something else for you. And that's hard, isn't it, when we get a no from God? When God says, no, don't do that. Especially if our heart is really in it and we really want something. How do we handle those situations? And so Paul goes on with his journey, but it's a slow journey up to the town of Troas as he sort of weaves his way through what we now know as northern Turkey, really. And eventually arrives in Troas, this port city, port town. But the Jews, of course, are not really a seafaring nation. And for them, it's a journey that maybe is fraught with danger or fear. The sea to them was a no-go area. And we have no records of any great Jewish navy exploits. David, he had a great army, but he never had a great navy. And so we don't ever see that in Jewish culture. And so for Paul, this was a trickier part of the journey, a more difficult part of the journey. But he sets sail. And then eventually he gets to cities like Philippi and Corinth. And of course we know there, as we get the other letters that we look at, that churches were established, that he had a great ministry there. And things blossomed because he made his way there. And so, although it was maybe not the route that Paul would have chosen, he got to the place God wanted him to be. And I wonder if that's your experience as well, as you've been a Christian for a while maybe, and you've found that sometimes God takes you on a different journey, but he gets his will done in the end. And of course, to do that, it's really important that we can hear the voice of the Holy Spirit. And I wonder how you hear the Holy Spirit speaking to you. Maybe in the small group you can share some of your experiences, because it's good to hear from each other. And so there are some discussion points that walk us through the text, which your small group leader has and will open up before you during the course of your small group. Have a great small group and enjoy your time together.